guys, Andrew McFarland here from StartAJuiceBar.com. Hope you're feeling amazing, happy, healthy, and everything is beautiful in your world. Today I'm going to talk about how to structure investments if you're raising money from your business. I'll also talk a little bit about raising money from banks or private lenders and kind of the distinction if you want to go that route or go through a combination of both of those things, banks and investors. Before I do, if you guys are new to the channel, for the last over a decade, myself and our agency has been helping people like yourself launch and scale juice bar businesses. At this stage, we've helped over a few hundred entrepreneurs in almost every country, and so all the content and information we're giving you isn't coming from speculation, it's coming from real life experience. So hope you guys find a lot of value in this. And diving into today's conversation. For me, initially, when I started my first juice bar, we actually started with a juice truck, I was intending to start a juice bar and had some sort of verbal agreements from some investors that they were going to give me some money, and then I just didn't really like the dynamic and relationship because there wasn't a lot of confidence in my ability to execute, and I felt like I was going to be spending a lot of time just making them happy and not running the business, which I knew should be my primary focus. So I actually just said, you know what, I'm not going to move forward with you guys. I'm going to take the money that I have, I'll start a truck, and then kind of grow it from there. And so I am going to talk a little bit about the sort of interpersonal dynamics with investors. But let's first start by talking about how do you structure these agreements? Because the truth is every industry has different relationships to investors and what the valuation of a company is going to be, what the risk and reward is, right? And in this business in particular, you probably want to know how much equity should I offer? Should I offer equity at all? And how do I structure these agreements? This can be kind of complex, and so I'm going to give you an overview, and we can go deeper into this if you do want to reach out to me at Andrew@StartAJuiceBar.com if we're helping you with a business plan or anything else. But I just want to give you an overview and kind of give you the key insights when you're thinking about starting your business and raising investment capital or going to banks. So first I'm going to start about what's the difference between going to a bank versus investors. Generally, banks are going to want you to collateralize the loan, and they're going to structure it as a loan. They're not going to take equity in your company, which means they're going to have a certain interest rate. You're going to pay it back over a certain number of years, and this is going to be based on your credit, your bank balance, and do you have something to collateralize the loan, meaning guarantee the loan. So if the business doesn't succeed, they're going to come after your house, they're going to come after any other assets you have. Maybe you've got stocks, maybe you've got something else, right, that they can say, okay, this is a guarantee for us, so no matter what, we are going to get our money back. On the flip side, looking at investors generally might be open to structuring the investment as a loan, and they normally don't make you personally guarantee this loan. Now that's a little bit more rare. Most of the time, investors do want equity in the business, and that is going to be their sort of payout or their extra incentive for not having you guarantee the loan and taking more risk on you, because in a situation with a bank where you're guaranteeing the loan, there's less risk for the bank. So that for that reason, they don't need equity in your company. For an individual who's coming in saying, hey, I'm going to write you a check for 100 grand, but you're not going to personally guarantee it. Well, guess what? I want a portion of your company. And so the thing to be aware of, and there's also, I'll kind of mention in this, there's things that people do and they structure these agreements as what they call convertible notes. What that means is that they might have the note, which is the agreement, to say, okay, for the first 2 years, you are going to pay me a certain percentage. So we're going to structure it as a loan. I'm going to see how the business performs. And at a certain period of time, it could be 2 years later, I can decide to convert that note into equity, or I can convert it, decide not to, and have you pay out whatever the investment was. I gave you 50 grand, you paid me 15% per year on that 50 grand, and then at the end of the 2 years, I decided, you know what, business is going well, I prefer to have this 50 grand turn into equity in the business. Or you know what, business isn't going so well, I want my 50 grand back, I made 15% over the next 2 years, I feel happy, you're happy, all is well. These are a little bit more complex agreements, and just as a little overview in all of this, I want to say that these are just ways that agreements can come together. There's a multitude and myriad of ways in which you can structure financial agreements and investment agreements. There are as many as there are blades of sand or blades of grass. So it can get very nuanced, and the part of the beauty and the curse of being an entrepreneur is there are things that people do as standard practices, but you also get to create them. So don't let anything that I'm saying limit you to not getting more creative in any investor relationship, but you can use it as a framework to support you to maybe have this conversation with prospective investors in a way that might give you a little bit of historical precedence, right? So let's look at equity percentages. Let's say, hypothetically, you are going to raise $200,000, just to keep it nice and simple and round. And you're actually going to put some money in. Normally, we value the equity portion, or I should say the financial investment in the business, as close to 50%. So we might say 49%. And the other half is really sweat equity. You need people to operate the business. That's where you come in, and you're going to bring that value. So that's the other half of the value. One is capital injection. The other half is running the business. And so let's say in this scenario, you're going to raise $200,000, or that's the total amount of money that you need. But you've got a little bit of money you've saved up, and you've got 50 grand. Okay? So you basically take that second half of the business that's going to be valued at about 49%. You could say 45%, you could say 40%. That might be a little bit low, and it might not be something that incentivizes people to invest in your business, because the more equity you're willing to give up, the more people are going to be inspired to invest in your company. So let's say 49%, and you're going to invest 50 grand. So it's not exactly that, but let's say for that sake, your equity is, right, half of that is 25%. That percentage total of whatever the 50,000 is worth in that moment. So you would keep that, and then the rest you would leave for investors that are going to invest at 150,000 extra. If someone came in with a full 200,000, you'd say, okay, great, here's your equity, it's 49%. Right? If someone comes in with 100,000, okay, here's your equity, it's roughly 24.5%. Right? So you would break that equity portion down into increments of whatever other people are going to invest in. It might not just be one person, it can be a number of people. You might have an investment minimum and say, you can invest in my business, and I'm accepting investments as little as $10,000. In which case, if you're getting 200,000, you'd need 20 people to do that, and then you'd break up that equity portion for each person based on that amount. So the one thing I want to give you in this as well, and kind of break it down even more, is when you're raising capital, there are kind of two layers. Let's say this is your first store. For many of you, you guys are just getting started if you're listening to this. You have your overall brand, right, as an entity, and then you have your storefront that you're opening. The real value is in the expansion of the business. And so I would suggest, and you might figure out how to do this for the first round of investors, you might say, hey, okay, we're going to give you that portion of equity. If one person comes in, just to keep it simple, they invest 200 grand, you say, great, we're going to give you 49% of our first location, and we're going to give you 5%, right, or maybe 10%, I'd say on the high side, of our overall brand, okay? Which means if we open up more locations, you'll always have that 10% equity in the parent company. You don't want to have someone come in and invest in your first storefront, and then they own half your business, because guess what? To open up store number 2 and store number 3 and store number 4, you're still going to need to raise money, right? So how do you do that? So it's important to realize that there's two different things at play. There is the actual store, the physical location where that cash flow is going to be coming in, and maybe that store is running for a year, 2 years. And then there are going to be other stores you open that the brand itself, the parent company owns. And so you may give them an incentive to have some ownership in that. You may not at all, but you need to make sure that in your paperwork you separate those things and don't see them as one singular entity. Otherwise, you could get into a situation where as you're trying to expand your business, you're sort of stuck in this relationship. And it's good to reward the people who invest in your business early, but you don't want to become crippled in your ability to raise capital in the future because of your initial investment, which is why these decisions that you make early on are so important and could give you the freedom, or they could cripple you in your expansion in the future. So these are kind of the key insights I wanted to give you guys today when it comes to structuring investments with investors and or going to the bank. And remember, you don't have to go all in one direction. You can do some money through a bank. You might have your own savings. You might get some from investors. You might pull out lines of credit. It doesn't matter, right? It's just a matter of, one, what is your threshold to risk? Would you prefer getting a loan so you don't have to give up any equity in the company? Or would you prefer, if you don't have assets and you don't have things for them to leverage, or if you do, you just would say, okay, I don't want to put my house on the line. I'd rather work with investors, because if things don't go well, then at least, we all take the loss and I don't have to keep paying this loan out for the next, 7 to 10 years or whatever the number is. So it's a personal decision. It's not a right or wrong. It just depends. And so based on who you are, you can decide and move forward accordingly. If you guys are in a place where you don't have a business plan yet, or you do have a business plan, but you're not 100% confident that if you give it to investors that they're going to be really excited about your business, then reach out to us. You can reach me personally at Andrew@StartAJuiceBar.com. As I mentioned before, we create many, many business plans for a lot of our clients to help them raise the money that they need, and knowing that that is the next most crucial step for you in order to actually have these conversations, and realize that investors and banks, they're not going to look at your business plan twice. They're going to look at it once, and if it's not what they want to see, they're going to move on, right? They're not going to have you come back and say, oh, actually I revised it. Oh, now I got an agency to do it, right? You have to make sure that you always put your best foot forward, because you don't get a second chance to make a first impression in these regards. And then the last thing that I want to mention, which is something I touched on before, is you have to really be clear of what the relationship is between you and your investors. Because you don't want a bunch of backseat drivers, as they say, people who are trying to run your business, that if you've got, let's say, 20 investors and they all feel like, oh, I'm an owner in the company, and they are, but they need to be clear that they're not running the day-to-day. You might have meetings with them regularly just to get updates from them, or give them updates and also get their feedback. That's okay, but you have to control that energy. Structure it beforehand. Have a clear conversation when they're investing, right? Because they're not just doing you a favor. You're coming into what's meant to be a mutually beneficial agreement and relationship. And so if someone's giving you money, you have to say, okay, great, this is how we're going to relate to one another. We'll send quarterly updates. We might have quarterly meetings with all of the investors. Maybe it's a phone call, and during that time, I'll let you guys know what's going on, what's the direction of the business, what our challenges are, where we're succeeding more and more, what our direction is that we're going into. But that's when we communicate. And maybe we might communicate every now and again through email. But do not have a situation where investors, if you've got 20 of them, are calling you all the time, hey, I walked into the store, I didn't like the way this person did that, you should fire them. They are not running your business, because that will become a nightmare for you. You've already got and will have enough going on as it is with your own management, hiring, firing people, your marketing, your products, right? Maintaining equipment. There's all kinds of stuff that you have. The last thing you need is extra investors making your life harder, because everyone's got a different opinion about how you should run the business. So that's just a little tip, something I've learned from experience. Be aware of this as you can have these conversations up front to avoid this. And as always, wish this information is valuable to you. Wishing you guys a beautiful day. Hope you're happy, healthy. If you guys like the video, press the like button. If you've got any questions or comments, or just want to tell me that you like the content, you can put that in the comment box below. If you're not subscribed to the channel, you definitely want to subscribe. Press the subscribe button. There's also a notification bell, so you get alerted every time we put out new content. If you're not following us on Instagram, we're just at StartAJuiceBar there. We put out content every single day. You can also direct message me there. And if you're not listening to our podcast, the Juice Bar Experts podcast on iTunes, on Spotify. You can passively listen as you're running, cleaning the house, maybe driving your car, just to keep you inspired, just to keep you up to date and keep you in the mental context of really launching this business. And so, wishing you well, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Take care. I hope you guys have been enjoying all of the content. If you're in a place where you are really inspired to start your juice business, but you're not exactly sure what the next steps are, for you, we've created a free ebook, The 15 Steps to Starting Your Juice Business from Scratch. This is going to give you an overview of everything that you need to do from just having a concept all the way to launching your business. Beyond that, if you're inspired to go even deeper, we've created an online course, the Juice Bar Master Blueprint, that is going to go into great detail into every single area of launching a successful juice business. There's links for both of these in the description below. I know you'll find a lot of value out of them. As always, wishing you guys a lot of success, and I'll see you at the next video.